Today, this Friday, they're starting with the global climate strike. That's also where John has taken off to go, as I was just mentioning. And it was all begun by a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist, as we've talked about many times on the show, Greta Thunberg. She was doing this on her own for a year or so beforehand, even before things were getting started. So this is built into a global phenomenon where protesters are taking to the streets in multiple countries. There are 4,638 events in 139 countries around the world now. And it's begun just today, and it's gonna go for a week. So it's from September 20th through the 27th, right before they have the big global event over the week, starting on Monday. So we'll start with this weekend, after the event, finish with more. So they're gathering at the United Nations for the Climate Action Summit on September 23rd. Where the countries are supposed to ramp up their ambitions to curb greenhouse gases under the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. So as I mentioned, the second worldwide strike is planned for September 7th, just afterwards. So I guess it's an inspiring thing to push something that's finally happening with the ideas that's going on with everything across the world. And some tweets that are going down from some of these events that have already begun. So as the day begins to stretch over the United States, DC is having their event, New York is also having their event. Our own Emma Vigeland is at the event in New York. John is headed to the one in Los Angeles. This one is in Dublin, the Marion Square, Dublin. The sheer number of people that we're already seeing there with, I mean, if you hadn't heard about it before it happened, someone may walk out of their apartment and go, what just happened in front of me?
Yeah.
And you know, so sometimes we have the dispute over climate change. Look at this in Freiburg, Germany.
Huge.
As things are going down and this is building across the world, even there was some tweets about how I believe there's an event in Afghanistan that people seem to be a little bit surprised about. This is a worldwide event where people are finally realizing what's going on.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect example of the fact that there are protests in a place like Afghanistan where I think a lot of us are like, aren't there bigger issues than climate change to worry about? And yet climate change, especially in the Middle East when it comes to drought and the refugee crisis, that has everything to do with why people are moving, in addition to failed wars of occupation and counterterrorism. But I think that this is no longer an issue that it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was being politicized. You know, this is an issue that you don't have to be a crunchy Birkenstock wearing, you know, like white dreaded dude to care about, right? It's like it's everybody, and primarily it's hitting people of color, the global South first.
Now, we hear sometimes the opposition to it is that these scientists are being paid, these Democratic politicians and liberals are just pushing an agenda to get some money somehow. They still haven't fully told me how talking about the climate crisis that's happening right in front of our faces actually makes money versus fossil fuel companies and polluters and large corporations that actually do have a direct monetary involvement in denying what's going on.
Right.
So anyway, if that's getting pushed just for American politicians, understand that this is now global. I'm not sure if they're talking about how these Democrats have taken over the entire world and convinced enough people to think that something serious is happening. So another tweet that's happened from Anil Dash, I believe we have this graphic, mentioning how every single kid on the city bus is talking about the climate strike, even crossing over to kids who go to other schools who usually don't talk to each other. And they're also talking about storming Area 51, which is, of course, something that always has to happen if you're a kid.
That's next. When the alien files are released.
Yeah, that's the
all
next
in due time.
strike. Which actually, I mean, we could talk about the UFOs that have been spotted before.
I mean, if they know how to solve climate change, like I'm with it.
We're down no matter what.
They're just like, stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. Duh. We're like, oh man, I thought there was gonna be some kind of vibranium under there.
So another scene from Jeremy Corbyn says, 100,000 here in London, thousands more around our country, and millions across the world. This movement will not be silenced. I'm here with a message. Labor will meet your demands for a green industrial revolution and real change. So this is what I wonder, and when this first came up and I heard about it, I was thinking, so what is the next step? What is the actionable thing that'll happen from activism, from just a 16-year-old kid from Sweden, to now it's spreading to different ages, from kids who can't vote yet to adults, and there's movements and organized events to make sure this is going down correctly. How is this gonna lead now to the change that we need?
I mean, I think that this has always been the strategy, looking at how global leaders have been so so much dragging their heels on this issue. So the strategy is pressure from the outside and obviously trying to push your leaders to sign on to the Paris Agreement or to re-sign up in our case, right? Since the US has bowed out of it. But the point is that it's been 25 years that the UN climate, I think the UN Special Commission on Climate Change has been trying to quote unquote solve climate change. And they've been dragging their heels this entire time. And I think about Five years ago, activists around the world were waking up to the fact that our leaders are not doing anything. There's nothing to pressure them. And let's remember that the climate agreement, the Paris Climate Accord, which keeps global temperatures to well below 1.5 degrees of warming, which is already really, really bad. But we're on track once again to like 4 degrees warming, but definitely 2 in the next, I believe, like 10 years soon. There is no binding resolution in this agreement, meaning it's not like you get sanctioned if you, JR, the country, doesn't meet your climate emission standards or whatever it is, right? Unless, if you don't curb your fossil fuels, there's nothing that the international community can do to you. So I think that's where the pressure really needs to be on is how are we gonna actually hold countries accountable on the macro level? And then on the national level, you saw the way Jeremy Corbyn is pushing green jobs. You see the way AOC and Bernie Sanders are pushing things like the Green New Deal. And then you see the ways that Dianne Feinstein, rolls up a little poster of a small 8-year-old and is like, that's cute, darling, go home. So that is the battle that we're fighting, is how to transform our economies on a national level and how to hold these international actors accountable.
I think when it comes to politicians and their power to legislate and implement certain strategies and laws to make sure that we do curb our effects, it has to be, someone asked me before if they think the AOC movement and the liberal and progressive movement is a real deal. And honestly, it has to, so AOC was put in office, and I think it needs to be a confirmation election first. So like after this one came in and she goes through her first term, there needs to be another wave of the same type of candidates, and and others like her being reelected. And that will prove to stubborn politicians who generally don't have much of they're not pushed very easily unless they're paid, obviously. They need to know that their jobs are at risk unless they do something. Because until then, they have no reason to believe so. We've got Republican politicians that won't even do anything on guns until they won't even read any policies about any kind of, even as minor as background checks on guns, until their dear leader, the president, accepts something. They won't even consider it. So when it comes to things like climate change, it has to be proven to politicians, you're gonna lose your job, because that's what you care about, and your money, unless something changes here.
Absolutely, and these are the climate voters of the future and our future representatives.
They can talk about the youth, they can talk about these stubborn millennials, but the thing is, those are the people that are gonna be voting for you to stay in office as time goes on.
Thank you for watching this clip from The Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.